Hey guys, it's Rory from A&S Gear. We're upstairs with the brand new DSR Plus mech frame. So this right here will take our DSR Plus electronic gun and convert it over to the mechanical gun. So inside your box, you're going to get your little manual to follow along with right here. And the manual is actually quite nice. There's nice pictures to follow along with and things like that. It's pretty simple and straightforward to put together. But one thing with this frame that I think is super cool is you can use the mech frame and take your electronics out of your standard frame and put them into your mech frame. Now that doesn't mean you can have an electric mech frame. You would take the mechanical components out of the mechanical frame, take your electronic components, put them into the mechanical frame, and have a single trigger electric DSR Plus. So inside your little parts kit, you're going to get the electric single trigger. So if you're going to run the electric version of the single trigger, you need to switch to this trigger because this one is meant for the mechanical trigger and the mechanical solenoid and everything back here. But you could take this, put it in, put your original electronic solenoid in, all that stuff, and have the electric gun with the eyes and all that jazz, but in the mechanical, in the single trigger frame, not the mechanical frame, but the single trigger frame. So a single trigger electric setup, a mechanical single trigger setup, or an electric double trigger setup, or all the options you could have if you bought this frame right here. So it's pretty cool. I think it's pretty cool. So this, like we said, comes already with the mech frame in mech trigger installed. This is the housing right here for the mechanical trigger. Take these screws out. You can pop that whole assembly out, and then you could go about putting this one in if you wanted to. Same DSR grip setup with 2 screws. One on each side. Take those out, and then you can get the grips off. The solenoid assembly for the mechanical frame. You can wiggle it up and out just like that. And then you can get inside here and do all your replacing if you need to. You take these 4 screws out right here, and this screw, pop this cap off the front, and allow you to get into all your parts. Now, inside your manual, there is a really nice breakdown of the solenoid and all of its parts. So I'm not going to take that one apart because you can see it really breaks down easily and you can follow along, and everything is labeled. So if you need parts, O-rings, whatever it happens to be, you can find them all down in here. So that's really, really nice. But I do want to show you how that pops right out of there. And then when we go to put it back in, you can just set that right down inside there. Really, really nice. Now, there's some cool things about taking it apart and switching this onto this. So let's do that. Let's put one together for you so you can see how it works. And then we'll go from there. Safety, all the mechanisms are all there. One thing it does not come with, though, is another ASA. So the regulator assembly down here, you do need to port the one you have on your gun originally over to the new one. So to set this up and get it going, the first thing we need to do, or the first thing I would do, is just get the grips off the original DSR and off the mech frame that you're going to be putting on. It's just going to make it easier to work with, especially since you got to switch this over to here. You're going to need to take the grips off anyway, so you might as well just start with the grips. So let's get those off. Remember with the DSR grips, that screw that is up in the front right here is actually captured inside the grip right there. So it likes to stay in there. I just turn the gun over and it'll fall out. Lift that up, turn the gun over, get that out. And I'm going to keep kind of everything separated right here. I'm going to give myself a little bit more space to work on just for the time being. I'm going to move this over here like so. All right, and then we'll do these ones. right. Now grips. Grips off of there. These grips, when I took it off earlier, they're incredibly difficult to get off. Like, so you see how easy that one popped off? This one did not work that same way. He wanted to fight me pretty much the whole way. So typically when you take these off, you will lift the corner out and then you rotate it forward, which allows you to get your finger underneath this section, and then you can pop that up. I'm going to do that and then get underneath there. And then I can kind of come around the bottom and get that off of there. So the first time you take them off, it's going to be a little bit of a struggle. That's okay. That's pretty normal right there. All right, so we have this off. We can see our solenoid assembly sitting right there. The gasket is along the top here. We want to make sure that that gasket it doesn't get damaged or anything while we're just messing around with it right here. For this gun here, let's do our reg assembly first, our ASA regulator combo, and port that over. So there's 2 screws at the bottom right here. I'm going to take both of them out. There's one on each side. We're going to use those when we move it over. Like that. And then we can just kind of wiggle the bottom off. And everything's contained inside here. The piston and spring is all inside here, so there won't be anything left up inside of your gun there. So you don't have to worry about forgetting a part. Gonna snap right in. We can put our screws back in. There we go. Now that's on. Easy. First step, super simple. Next step, we want to take our front grip off. So we undo our lock. I just use a penny. You can use a flathead screwdriver, a nickel, quarter, whatever you want. That exposes the front frame screw, which we want to get off. All right. That's off of there. Then to expose the rear frame screw, we do need to remove the bolt. And then that rear frame screw is right here. Now for these parts up here, when we take this off of here, we don't need to get crazy with it. Just gently separate them apart with a little bit of force. And it should come right off just like that. We're done with this, by the way. We can set this off to the side, that frame right there. But we need to remove this solenoid because we're using the one that's inside the mech frame. So we need to unplug the solenoid wire, which goes up to the front here. And I would be careful with this when you're doing it, that you're not pulling on the wiring, because it is possible to pull the wiring out of the end of the socket. So I'm using my pick to kind of get in that little corner right there and lift that out so I can pull that out. This other bit of wiring right here, the wire that comes up from the battery to here, and then the eye wire that goes to there, you can leave those alone. You don't need to take them out when you're putting the mechanical kit on. You can just leave them in there. You don't need to take it apart. If you're doing the electronics in the mechanical frame, you'll want them there because they're helpful. The eyes, and you need the power, obviously. So just leave that all together right there. You don't need to pull it apart. Even though the mechanical frame doesn't use the eye sensor, you don't need to take it out. We're going to undo all of our solenoid screws. We're going to take that out, and then we can just set that over to the side over there. Put it in a bag, put it somewhere safe where you're not going to lose it. All right. Now I'm going to look around to make sure that there's no gunk or anything on here, that there's no metal shavings or anything in here that I don't want to be in there. And then I'm ready to proceed to the next step. So in your bag of parts, you're going to have a little baggie that's got 2 little posts right here. And those posts are what lines up the solenoid when you go to assemble it. So there is no screws that go into this solenoid that mount it to the body like this one did right here. It's just going to stay in place right there by these little struts. And you can see that there's a hole there and a hole there. These little towers or posts or whatever you want to call them are going to line it up so it fits right in there. And then the force of the frame coming up and sandwiching against the body is what's going to make the seal right there. So we take these two, and if I remember correctly, it's well, from the way I'm looking at it, the bottom left one and the top right one. But I'm going to look in the manual real quick just to make sure. Yeah, so I've got the gun set up like the manual right there. Bottom left, top right screw hole. And it's very specific in there to put these in by hand and only hand tight. So I'm going to put it in and turn until I feel it stop, and I'm not going to tighten it down. Then go to the top right until it stops, and then leave it alone. And there you can see those sticking out right there. There's a little bit of an O-ring on the end of each one, and that just helps it hold securely inside of the solenoid right there. So we're going to take that and we're going to line up those two holes. Boop, boop. We're going to slide it up, and then we're going to take our two screws and we're going to put this back together. And the squeezing of the frame against the body is what makes the seal on the solenoid right there. So there is no screws, again, like I said, like on this solenoid where there's 4 screws that mount this to the body. I'm not going to use that. And then when you go back, let's say you wanted to use the electronics in the single frame setup like that, you don't need to use these screws as well. This will just mount right up in there without using these screws. It's pretty cool. All right. Let's see. I think we're pretty much done. Take our bolt, put that in there. Then we would take our front grip. Remember this one goes to this. I mean, it's the same. It doesn't matter. You can put them whichever way you want. I'm just trying to keep track of it all. There we go. And then lock that in place. And then we would take this and go ahead and put that on there. And we put our 2 screws back in the top. And there we have it. Make sure our safety works. Safety is good. That's it. That is the brand new mechanical DSR frame installed onto the DSR. It's simple to do. It doesn't take a lot of time. I did it in a couple minutes, but I was doing a lot of talking too. So a couple minutes to switch it out. If you're just focused on doing it, it's not hard. It's a real trick setup and it shoots real nice. So if you have a DSR Plus, you want to switch it over to mechanical frame, this is the way to do it. DSR mech frames in stock at ansgear.com.